Hey everyone, Evan again, and today's review is on Civil War. So the plot of this movie is this woman named Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst, is this journalist who is tasked to go to Washington D.C. to report on an oncoming civil war that's happening. So there's a bunch of terrorist attacks, there's a bunch of bombings, and she's tasked to go there. While she also in New York, in her home state, she rescues a young photographer named Jesse from a terrorist attack. So she tries to take care of Jesse, and they both try to go on a big road trip to go to Washington D.C. while they also get the help of some other journalists. And the whole thing is that they're trying to report on this oncoming civil war while also feeling the experience at the same time, and they all have to work together to calm each other down and hopefully survive and get a good story out of it, and well, just you know hope the best for America. This was a really good movie, actually. I know I don't usually see movies opening night, but this one, like, I was pretty curious about this movie. I thought, yeah, I do like war type films and I love action movies, so this could be a good one to check out. And it was actually a really good experience. I did not see this in IMAX, so I mean, I think I've probably said before, I hardly see movies in IMAX because it's too expensive. But this movie, I think I didn't really need to because I still thought the experience was super good. Like this, like visually, I not just visually, like even just the sound was so good. Like I think this movie is definitely theater worthy. Like not just for the action and the visuals, like it just doesn't look cool, but the sound really engulfs you, and the way you follow these characters, it doesn't make you feel like you're in the movie, but it creates a really good atmosphere, and that's really what makes this movie very theatrical. But it's not just the technical aspect of it. It's not just the way the film looks. It's not just the scope and the sound and such. Even the movie outright, just it actually had a really interesting plot. I mean, this isn't based on a true story. This isn't one of those war films, but nonetheless, I actually did really like the idea of this movie because it touches on an aspect that lots of war movies or big historical events movies don't really touch up on: journalism. And journalism, a lot of people really take it for granted because this movie proves like just all the deadly situations everyone's put in, and all the how scary the world can be. It can be really much when all you're just trying to do is report it and you're very helpless. Like that's really what makes this movie so suspenseful. Like it's not like other war movies where it follows soldiers who have armies, or they have guns and they have hells. Like they're actually prepared. Here they're not really prepared. They're just trying to face danger, and they could pretty much die any chance they get. So that's what makes it really suspenseful. And the relationship between Lee and Jesse, I think, is really good. I mean, I know it's kind of typical for action movies, like suspenseful movies, to like have the main protagonist side with the kids, because kids and animals are the thing in action movies that lots of audiences feel emotional attachment to. Actually, more so, it's animals for a lot of audiences. Because haven't you noticed everybody who watches like an action movie is always like, I can take all the deaths, but does the dog die? And no, there's no animals in this movie. Just to clarify, just you know what I mean. Um, and and the dynamic between Lee and Jesse, it's really good. Like they don't feel like they're bickering. They don't feel like a typical mother. They don't feel like a mother's uh, daughter dynamic, even though they're not related. But they honestly feel like friends, and they feel like given that that uh, Leah's Jesse's hero. Like Jesse really looks up to her, so that's really what makes this whole thing really suspenseful to not just Lee but also Jesse, because Jesse's like, I'm in a really deadly situation, but even though it's with a person I look up to, I don't know, I'm still pretty scared about. And that's the thing about this movie. It touches that you could still feel fear while also being with someone you really look up to. And even if you feel comfortable with someone, it's okay to feel afraid. And I really like that they touch on that aspect. That's something that a lot of, these action movies and war dramas don't really touch upon. So I do really give this movie points for that. And lots of people said this movie isn't very action focused. Like lots of people say it's more of a political drama, and it is. But I don't know what version of the movie. This movie had a lot of action. Like I think it was really fast paced. Maybe a little too fast paced. Cause this movie's only an hour and a half long, so yeah, it does go by pretty quick, and there's lots of action to keep you excited. But it's it was a pretty good movie. It's very, even though it's an A24 movie, you think it'd be really artsy, and yeah, it is pretty artsy. Like there was a lot of drama in it, but at the same time, it's got a very good it's got a very good scope and scale to make it seem grand and epic. So it's really artsy and really touches upon an aspect of war that almost no war movies touch upon. Heck, even in the media in general, lots of journalists don't really, like I said, they don't really give enough credit for all the risks they put just to report on stuff and just to spread awareness and how bad the world can be. And this movie is definitely a good example to show how really scummy the world would be, because the world's a scary place. So sometimes movies like war films are definitely stuff we don't need them, but like you know what I mean. They're a good reminder of how, yeah, sometimes you got to be safe out in the world. So this movie really does showcase that you really need to watch yourself out in the world, especially if there's something as big as a war going on, because it's pretty terrifying. And it's definitely, sometimes those are the kind of stories we need. Not all the time, but there's definitely moments where we want to be aware that we need to be careful in the world. And just it's a really good story about bonding with people, and even just people you don't know. Like first you're just riling up with a bunch of random citizens and soldiers, but the next thing you know, they feel like a family to you. So if you really look out for each other, especially during something as bad as a war and a bombing or some stuff like that, like you really don't want to uh, you don't want to be alone. You definitely want to connect with people, and to you want to feel safe around somebody. So I think this movie really does touch upon that very well. It's very touching in the right moments, but it's also very dramatic and pretty upsetting, but also very grand and epic. So it pretty much gives you all the feels a war movie should make you feel. I mean, well, I wouldn't say this movie's like one of the best movies of the decade so far. I still think it's a really good movie. I don't know if it'll remain in my top 10 of this year, but hey, I mean, so far, I think it would be up there in my top five. So yeah, Civil War, it's a really good movie. If you plan on watching it, I do recommend it. It's quite good. Okay, the trailers I got before the movie, I got Deadpool and Wolverine. This was the actual red band version that's on YouTube. It wasn't the, I mean, obviously, because this is an R-rated movie, so I would have gotten this. Yeah, I'm still excited for Deadpool and Wolverine. I haven't been this excited for an MCU movie in a really long time. It definitely looks like it, despite you know, being inquired into the MCU, it looks like they definitely kept the style and spirit of Deadpool, and it's definitely looks like a big. It's good to see, just like Deadpool 2 did kind of touch upon, the X Force and stuff. It looks like with Deadpool and Wolverine, it looks like Deadpool is kind of more so going to get integrated with more X-Men characters, given he's with Wolverine. And I hear Pyro's going to be in this movie, who's the main guy from X2 is reprising his role. So it should be really fun. So I definitely can't wait to see it. I got Furiosa. Looks really cool. I haven't seen the other Mad Max movies still yet, but I'm looking forward to this one. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, a new Guy Ritchie movie. I did see this one advertised before another movie. I think it was before Argyle, because I did see Argyle like 2 months ago. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It looks fun. It looks like a good action film. So I probably might check this one out. And Henry Cavill, he can't do no wrong. So I'm curious about it. I got Bad Boys Ride or Die. Yeah, unlike the one I got before. What was the last movie I saw? Oh yeah, Godzilla X Kong. Yeah, unlike that one, this is the red band version. But it looks funny. I still gotta see the other Bad Boys movies, so I'm curious about this one. I mean, Will Smith. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with Will Smith I've disliked. They're probably worth checking out. So I might see this one. It could be funny. I saw the TV Glow. This looks interesting. It's a A24 movie. I mean, it looks very artsy and strange, but I mean, it could be interesting. Like artsy horror films usually are kind of neat, so I'm curious about it. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters, but I'm so far pretty positive about it. So I'll I'll have high hopes. And I got Maxine. Um, this one might be interesting. I mean, I've never seen Pearl or X, but uh, this movie, I mean, it looks visually interesting, and it definitely looks like it'll be, kind of a fun kind of horror film. It looks more like a thriller. Apparently, it's a horror film, but I don't know. Maybe it just didn't want to show too much, but it didn't really look particularly scary. But Vaccine, yeah, I might check if I do watch Pearl or X sometime. I might want to check this one out. I don't really know yet, but hey, I guess we'll see. But yeah, Civil War. If you want to see a movie this weekend, I'd say check this one out. If you've seen all the big blockbusters already, I think this is definitely a good one to see on the big screen. And I mean, if you're lucky, maybe you could see this in IMAX because this might be good, but you don't really need to see it in IMAX because this still was a really good experience. Just the atmosphere of it really makes it a very visually pleasing experience, and also just it's just a very good story that makes you feel like you really need the biggest experience possible to make it seem grand and stick out more. And if you do like war movies, I think this is a really good one to check out. I'm starting to get into war movies recently, so this movie was definitely a good one to check out. I mean, yeah, it was kind of artsy, but it was neat. That's why I liked it. It was definitely a unique take on the war genre and taking on an aspect in the real world that's never really touched upon in war movies. So it was definitely a good effort, and I do think it was a unique story, and it definitely made for a pretty engaging movie. So yeah, Civil War, it's quite good. So goodbye, everybody. I'll see you whenever I return.